When Donald Trump screamed about Canada's digital services tax, he didn't just want leverage. He wanted control. He wanted to put Canada in check. He wanted them bending, bowing, paying, but what he got instead was a recalibration, a reversal, a masterclass in negotiation that outplayed not just Trump's threats, but his entire worldview.
If you're done watching corrupt elites rig the system and leave you behind, subscribe now. If you want real talk, raw truth, and zero spin, this is your channel. If you're ready to fight back, hit that subscribe button and stand with us.
Canada's pause on the DST wasn't surrender. It wasn't embarrassment. It was surgical. It was calculated. It was statecraft. And make no mistake, Carney didn't just survive the storm. He turned it into a knockout. Trump's brand of negotiation thrives on forcing your hand. Make concessions now or face punishment later. He thought he had Canada in a corner. Invoked Section 301, and suddenly Canada's tariff walls were vulnerable. But Carney saw the trap before it snapped shut. By signaling the DST would be paused, not repealed, Carney disarmed the legal basis for Trump's retaliation. No tax, no justification for punishment. And just like that, the playing field shifted. Canada controlled the narrative. Trump was reacting again, because in his world, power equals control. But Carney had taken the controls away. That moment wasn't just diplomatic finesse. It was economic self-defense. Canada prevented escalation by playing by rules Trump refused to honor and anticipating moves he couldn't execute. Clean kill. 3 words describe Carney's play. Pause, pivot, pressure. Pause the DST to open talks and delay punitive U.S. action. Pivot engagement from confrontation to negotiation. Breaking the standstill. Pressure with the implicit message that the tax can return if meaningful trade progress isn't delivered. Canada effectively told the U.S., you can have the pause, provide real solutions, and we might not hit play again. But if you don't, we still have a detonator in our hands. That's the kind of power diplomacy Trump never learned. Crisis? Nice. Carney turned it into leverage. Trump hit Canada's dairy supply managed market, the sacred cows, in his public demands. He didn't just want tax relief. He wanted to dismantle parts of Canada's national identity. But Carney held firm. He made sure every time Trump attacked dairy, Canadians saw what it meant. Losing control of pricing policies, risking small farmers, and surrendering local choice. Instead of being drawn into panic, Canadians rallied behind him. They saw the stakes, far beyond dinner tables. This wasn't just economics. It was a test of sovereignty. Carney didn't just negotiate. He repositioned. Instead of taking the bait for Trump's stage-managed standoffs, he held the high ground, engaging through diplomats and officials. The pause wasn't about humiliation. It was about restoration of negotiations on mutual terms. Trump may have the loudest microphone, but Canada had the channel. While Trump staged a tweet storm, Canada quietly prepared dossiers, economic forecasts, legal briefs, all ready in case the talks resumed. That preparation showed Trump and the world that this wasn't emotional reaction. It was policy discipline. When media screamed DST capitulation, Carney understood the optics. So he set the record straight, internally and externally. He spoke technical details in Parliament. He briefed provincial premiers. He underlined, this pause is temporary, not cancellation. And Canadians listened. Public opinion, once shaky, turned supportive. Instead of branding Carney weak, they saw him as steady. Communicator, operator, navigator. Trump's play was headline bait. Carney gave Canadians a story arc, with a twist at the end that promised the DST could return stronger. Carney didn't stop with the DST. He quietly leveraged in other arenas. Canada hinted, no DST reactivation, no talk of cross-border data flows, no leverage to adopt new AI treaties. Canada also quietly wrote letters to EU, UK, Japan, signaling it was a ready partner for global tax reform. Suddenly, Canada was leading global coordination on digital fairness, not through a speech, but through structure. Canada became a diplomatic connector, while Trump became a connector to what exactly? A growing circle of U.S. policy isolation. Yes, Canada paused the DST, but it didn't uninvent it. The same framework, laws, and political capital remain. Pausing didn't mean forgetting. Instead, it reminded the U.S. Canada can end this pause anytime. You can't. Section 3011 won't apply. The DST returns. Tariff timers rearm. Canada shut the door on Trump's theoretical attack, but kept the weapons locked. With U.S. Canada talked back on. Canada gained openings in high-value sectors. Discussions about green tech exports. Potential lift on canola and aluminum tariffs. Critical access to data flows for cross-border research. Trump wanted drama. Carney wanted deliverables. Within weeks, Canada submitted proposals on mutual recognition of farm approvals, streamlined customs for green energy, joint infrastructure funding for cross-border highways and bridges. These aren't flashy, but they hit where it matters. Tariffs drop, goods move, planning begins. Trump thrives on grandstanding. Carney thrives on substance. When Trump pounded Canada as digital thieves or backdoor protectors, Carney maintained composure. He invited independent tax experts to brief Parliament. He invited provincial feedback. He let data do the political talking. While Trump rushed to deflect blame, Carney methodically ushered in credibility. For decades, sovereignty meant geography, borders, policies, passports. But the digital economy changed that. Data knows no borders. Algorithms reach into every home. Carney's DST, pause or not, symbolize a shift. Sovereignty must include digital muscle. You can't publish your population's data to global firms and expect privacy. You can't extract revenue and not contribute. This is the redefinition Canadians are rallying around. Trump shrugged it off and lost not just negotiation edge, but legitimacy. Pause or not, Canada's DST sparked conversations worldwide. EU considering its own levy. OECD tabled global proposals. Global South nations seeking fair share. Canada now leads global policy. Trump leads trade tantrum trend. Canada defended vulnerable sectors, dairy, lumber, auto parts, without panicking. Canada held the leash on DST. That's economic sovereignty turned diplomatic tool, turned global influence. Canada faces two clear paths. Reignite the DST. If U.S. negotiations stall, pressure builds. Extend diplomatic outreach. Chart bilateral frameworks with partners ready to support digital fairness. In either case, Canada remains in charge. Pause didn't mean power loss. It meant power re-anchored. Trump wanted submission. What he got was strategy. He demanded compliance. What he got was calculation. He assumed dominance. What he found was resistance. Canadian sovereignty wasn't sold. It was safeguarded. Mark Carney didn't just manage a crisis. He conducted a symphony. And the score concludes with Canada no longer hostage to Trump's trade whims. Instead, it stands poised, sovereign, strategic, ready to bring its digital tax weapon back online on its own terms. That's not capitulation. That's command. The fight over Canada's digital services tax isn't just a bilateral skirmish. It's a proxy war in a much larger battle over who gets to set the rules of the global economy. What Prime Minister Mark Carney just pulled off wasn't merely a tactical retreat. It was a blueprint, a message to other nations watching this conflict unfold. You don't have to bow to America's chaos. Because here's the truth Trump doesn't want to admit. Canada isn't alone. France, the UK, Italy, India, they've all either proposed or implemented digital taxes. And in each case, the U.S. tried the same playbook. Intimidation, threats, trade retaliation. But Carney didn't just play defense. He flipped the script by pausing the tax strategically, not scrapping it. He bought time, refocused the conversation, and reloaded his political leverage. And now other countries are watching closely. Because if Carney can stand toe-to-toe with Washington's pressure machine and walk away with control of the narrative, it gives every other middle power country the same permission to push back, to say no, to legislate for their own people, not just for Silicon Valley profits. That's the real power of Carney's move. It wasn't just about tax dollars. It was about sovereignty, about economic dignity. And in that regard, the so-called pause might have more international ripple effects than anything in the last decade of Canadian diplomacy. Internally, Carney's challenge wasn't just across the border. It was inside Canada, too. Because Trump's trade chaos wasn't hitting American voters the hardest. It was slamming Canadian farmers, manufacturers, and tech entrepreneurs. In Ontario, prairie provinces, and Quebec, businesses were bleeding. And that's what makes Carney's restraint even more remarkable. He didn't lash out for headlines. He didn't pick fights to score points. Instead, he communicated behind closed doors with premiers, trade union leaders, and business coalitions. His pitch? Stay the course. This isn't weakness. It's recalibration. The DST isn't dead. It's holstered, ready to return if Trump doesn't budge. It's a strategy built on maturity, political, economic, and diplomatic. And while it didn't flood the front pages with fireworks, it stabilized the base. Canadian businesses, even those frustrated by U.S. policy, began to see the bigger picture. That's how Carney is winning, by preparing the country not just to survive Trump, but to outlast him. Make no mistake, Trump's tantrum over the DST wasn't really about sovereignty. It was about protection. Protection of American tech monopolies that don't want to pay up. And it just so happens those same companies are lining the pockets of Trump's re-election machine. What Carney exposed, whether intentionally or not, is how deeply captured U.S. trade policy has become. It's no longer just about national interest. It's about corporate interests. The fight isn't between nations anymore. It's between governments and billion-dollar platforms that think borders don't apply to them. By standing firm, Carney reminded those platforms and the American president that Canada is not a tech colony, that Canadian data, Canadian advertising markets, and Canadian digital real estate belong to Canadians. And if Google wants to make billions off that ecosystem, it needs to contribute to the infrastructure that makes it all possible. This is the future of trade diplomacy. Not just about aluminum and soybeans, but about algorithms, user bases, and cloud infrastructure. And Carney, more than anyone else in the G7, just proved he understands that. Let's talk cold numbers. When Trump threatened a 301 investigation, markets flinched. The Canadian dollar shook. Exporters from Halifax to Vancouver braced for impact. But by pausing the DST, Carney flipped that fear on its head. Investors stabilized. Negotiations reopened. Businesses recalibrated. That's the power of foresight. Trump plays checkers. Carney's playing chess with an economic time bomb strapped aboard. Because here's the deeper truth. The U.S. is no longer the stable trade anchor it once was. Every time Trump tweets about tariffs or throws a tantrum over policy, global markets take a hit. Countries like Canada that used to benefit from U.S. reliability are now having to engineer entire economic shock absorbers just to keep their economies on track. Carney's real long-term goal? Build an economy that isn't a hostage to Washington's mood swings. That's why he's cutting deals with the EU, why he's diversifying toward the Pacific, why he's exploring new African export routes. Because every time Trump slams a door, Carney is already walking through 3 others. The final message of this moment isn't just for Canadians. It's for every democracy, every prime minister, every finance minister staring down a bully with nuclear tariffs and billionaire backers. It's this: you don't need to match the chaos. You need to control the clock. That's what Carney did. He let Trump talk, let him rage, let him mock. And while the American president blew up press cycles, Carney mapped the terrain, picked his timing, and pulled the plug on Trump's leverage before the hammer dropped. That's not luck. That's leadership. When Donald Trump slammed Canada for imposing the digital services tax, he thought he'd found his next headline war. Another easy target to punch down on. He called it disgraceful anti-American and a direct threat to free enterprise. His base loved it. His tech donors loved it even more. Trump got what he wanted: airtime, outrage, distraction. But what he didn't anticipate, what he never anticipates, is what happens when the target doesn't panic. Because Carney didn't bite. He didn't throw a press conference tantrum. He didn't match insult for insult. He just paused, quietly, strategically, and in doing so, he collapsed Trump's whole bluff. Without the tax in effect, the legal foundation for a Section 301 investigation, Trump's favorite economic battering ram, disappeared. The probe became a ghost weapon, stripped of justification. USTR officials scrambled. GOP surrogates had to backpedal. Trump had staged a war and suddenly found himself without a battlefield. That's the beauty of Carney's pause. It wasn't about giving in. It was about removing the target before the arrow could fly. Trump brought a bazooka to a chess match, and Carney took away the board. Trump thrives on escalation. His entire model of international engagement is built around confrontation, grievance, and retreat only when he can call it a deal. What Carney did was redefine the rules of engagement. By pausing the digital tax, Carney didn't abandon Canada's position. He reset it. He repositioned the tax as a tool rather than a battleground. It became a pressure point, not a red line. And in doing so, he shifted the conversation back toward balanced trade, away from digital hysteria. And here's where it gets smarter. Carney immediately linked the pause to bigger issues: tariffs on Canadian steel, ongoing U.S. dairy demands, and border tech investment. Suddenly, what looked like a Canadian concession became a Canadian trade offensive. One calm move, pause the DST, and Carney pulled together a coalition of trade issues, framing Canada as reasonable, forward-thinking, and focused on fairness. It was diplomatic Aikido, redirecting Trump's force back against him. For all his bluster, Trump was exposed as dangerously unprepared for an actual policy response. His administration had no plan B if Canada outmaneuvered the 301 probe, no real trade platform beyond more tariffs, and certainly no appetite to confront the political cost of disrupting U.S. agriculture exports that depend on Canada's stable market. That's where Carney had the edge. His policy wasn't reactive. It was layered. When Trump cut talks, Carney pivoted to Europe. When tariffs loomed, Carney leveraged existing concessions to de-escalate. When the digital tax became a flashpoint, he paused and used a moment to rewrite the rules. That's not just smart. It's proof that good governance matters, that structure beats chaos, that international diplomacy still rewards clarity, not volume. This wasn't just a one-off trade dispute. It's the beginning of how Carney is defining Canada's role in the post-Trump world. He's building a model of power that doesn't depend on size or wealth, but on strategy, values, and leverage. Because Carney understands what too many ignore. Canada doesn't have to be a junior partner. Not to the U.S., not to China, not to the EU. With the right positioning, Canada can be the hinge between systems, between economies, between old power and new resilience. The DST fight proved it. It showed that with courage, clarity, and timing, even a middle power can seize the initiative and control the narrative. That's how legacies start. Not with fanfare, but with execution, precision, discipline, patience. Donald Trump treats international diplomacy like a WWE match. Loud entrances, name-calling, and wild threats. He plays to the crowd, not the consequences. But in this digital tax standoff, that performance fell flat. Why? Because Mark Carney didn't give him the spectacle he craved. Carney didn't swing back. He didn't hold emergency pressers or post cryptic tweets. He stayed the course. Quietly, calmly, deliberately. And in doing so, he reminded the world and Canadians that real leadership isn't about theatrics. It's about results. Trump wanted headlines. Carney delivered outcomes. And while the media tried to frame the tax pause as a retreat, it became crystal clear over time that Carney had something Trump never will: a compass, a guiding principle, a plan beyond tomorrow's news cycle. Carney wasn't fighting for a viral moment. He was defending Canada's long-term economic resilience. But the impact of Carney's strategy isn't limited to just U.S.-Canada relations. The world watched. European allies, Indo-Pacific partners, emerging markets. And what they saw was a model for how to handle economic bullying. Carney sent a quiet message. You don't need to yell to push back. You don't need to match fire with fire. Sometimes you pause, you reposition, and then you outmaneuver. This trade standoff was more than a dispute over taxes. It was a masterclass in geopolitical chess. And Mark Carney made the first quiet, brilliant move that changed the entire board.